What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Worship Conversation. My name is Nate Glasper Jr., and I am your host. And we've been having these conversations for the past 3 months. And we took a little break, and now we are back in full swing. And I got some wonderful guests here with me. But if you would do me a favor and just go ahead and share this video, tag someone who you think will benefit from this conversation, worship leaders, worship pastors, worship team members. If you've seen in the description of our flyer, we're going to be talking about a few things. But first off, I want to introduce these wonderful men of God who I've known collectively 20-something years. But I know even individually it's been about 15 plus years each. So I'm grateful. Man, we getting old, y'all. We getting old.
There we are.
Right. We are getting old. But I want to introduce to some and present to others Jeremy Simpson and Kenneth Henderson. So if I was a radio host, I had the clap track, we put the clap in it, the clear track right there. So, but many of you guys know these individuals, so go ahead and feel free to give them a shout out and to go ahead and share this video. So tonight we're gonna be talking about a article that's been going around. I was gonna say around campus. That's the professor in me coming out because I say that term a lot, but around the web, around Facebook especially, it was put out by NPR.org, and the title was Multiracial Congregations May Not Bridge the Racial Divide. And so we're going to talk about that tonight. And collectively, we led worship year after year, many events, many occasions. But also the three of us, we've led in predominantly white congregations, and we're going to talk about what were some of those pressures. And then we know people of color as well who've experienced some of those pressures. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about, is multi-ethnic, multicultural worship the answer to racial inequality? We're going to share our thoughts from there. And then lastly, are worship leaders of color pressured to choose one style over another? So my brothers and sisters who are tuning in, we are not here to bash. We are not here to hate. We are here to just shed some light, and we are here to just share our experiences. We're not even going to go all the way back to Jim Crow. We just going to talk about what's happening now, where we've been, and is there an opportunity to move forward from here? So we're going to share it from there. So what I want to do is create a space for these brothers to introduce themselves and just share with us how long you've been in this position of worship leadership, and where you're currently serving. Start with Jeremy.
Wow. Well, first of all, it's a privilege to be with you guys tonight. I love these opportunities to share, and really looking forward to our conversation tonight. As I look back on that question, Nate, you don't have to put our age out there like that.
I know, right?
But I think that it has been close to 27, 28 years that I've been serving in music ministry of some sort in the church. Presently, I serve as the co-director of the Wesley Foundation at Western Michigan University. And so part of my role obviously involves liturgy with preaching and worship, leadership as well. But aside from that, I have the honor to do some traveling music ministry as well as some concert ministry. So collectively, it's been about that amount of time.
Long time.
It is.
Well, I'm so glad you're here, man. It's been a while since we connected, but I think this is a really, really good and appropriate time to connect as well, especially on this topic. Maybe we can share some of our experiences that we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
Go ahead, Kenny.
So I am the worship director at Madison Square Church. I've been there around 3 years now, and I've been in worship leadership about 16 years.
Nice.
I believe it's 16 or a little more. I think I started when I was around 17. When I realized that the call was on my life for worship. So about 16 years. Yeah.
Nice. Again, those who are tuning in, feel free to share. We're going to also do some things to get you guys to interact with us as well. So we're going to jump right in because we got a lot of things we want to cover. So I want you to briefly share your journey of how you got to this place of leading worship in a diverse setting. Mm-hmm. Just share that, or when was maybe a first time you really realized, like, wow, it's a lot of diverse people here, you know? So I want you to kind of share that And is it something that you desired? Share that, and is it really something you desire? Go ahead, Kenny.
Yeah, so I grew up in a predominantly Black church,
Mm-hmm.
The Baptist denomination. And so I kind of made my journey from New Hope Baptist Church to Kingdom Life Ministries, which was a non-denominational church, but predominantly Black church, and then to Madison Square Church.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I had the call to lead worship at New Hope Baptist Church. I think I started to realize that maybe like around, because I think I met Ken Reynolds at the age of maybe 19, 18, 19.
Mm-hmm.
And I started recording and traveling with him. And in that traveling, I noticed that we were going to a lot of diverse churches, churches in other states that were just mixed congregations, Black, white, Asian. It was just all types of ethnicities, and I was not accustomed to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched how Ken operated in those spaces. And then I saw that and I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I knew I didn't want to just be boxed into just one ethnicity. I knew I wanted to reach all people.
Yeah.
With my ministry. And so at Kingdom Life, that's when I realized, okay, in order for me to really step into this role as being a multicultural leader, I really need to step outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Well, I know what I was asking for. You know, sometimes you say, this is what I want to do, and you don't know what you're going to encounter. You just know that's what, you know, you want to do. And so the opportunity came to lead worship at Madison, and to be the worship director there. And I applied for that position, and that's what brought me there. And so I've been there about 3 years. And it's been a journey for me. One of the things that I said when I came on board was that I had a lot to lend, but I had a lot to learn. I kept saying that because, you know, in the back of my mind, it was like, okay, don't think that you're going to be able to go in here and solve all these people's problems.
Yeah.
And I think because they have been searching for so long for a worship director, that many of them were probably like, okay, he's finally here. All right, he's going to bring all of this together. And so there was a lot of pressure there in that transition. So, but that's what brought me to Madison.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Wow, you said, so the question was, what was kind of our bridge into serving in multicultural?
Yeah, what got you there, and was it something that you desired initially?
Sure. Yes, I would say for me, it was something that I desired initially, and I didn't know what that desire even was.
Right.
As a child, I was raised in an all-Black Pentecostal church, and so growing up, our flavor and style of worship only resonated with people that looked like me, and there was always kind of this incongruence there in my heart. While I loved my people and I loved the expression and what was going on in our own home church, I felt like there was more. And so I remember being exposed to a church that was on a different part of town growing up in Holland, Michigan, and experiencing their worship style and their flavor. And while they also had a charismatic and Pentecostal expression, there were Black people and white people and brown people and everything in between. And I remember those experiences sitting there with my drum teacher and my organ teacher at the time and saying I wanted to know more. And so what that launched into for me was in a time of really learning how to play the piano and reading music. And then that morphed into pipe organ lessons. And that was really kind of the open door for me into a vein of multicultural worship, because while I understood our expression in the Pentecostal tradition, when I would go and play the pipe organ at the Christian Reformed Church, we would sing the same songs, but there was a totally different vibe. There was a totally different cultural understanding of what these words meant. Because in our church, when we sang, I will enter his gates with thanksgiving in my heart and his courts with praise, we clapped hands and we stomped feet and the organ swelled and the drums played. And at that church, they would sing, I'll enter his gates with thanksgiving. And it was very straight, very rigid. And there weren't a lot of smiles on people's faces. So for me, there was this kind of confusion as to, we're saying the same words, in essence, worshiping the same God, but it doesn't look the same, it doesn't feel the same. And so I'd say out of that, it birthed a passion and a desire to see a worship experience within a cultural context in the church that included different people and different styles, different flavors, different sounds.
Have either of you ever felt like, you know, when you get the eagerness to share with someone, if it's your favorite restaurant experience or a new pair of shoes that came out, you know, you're so eager to share. And I think when I was first introduced to multicultural worship, I had that feeling of, not that one was better than the other, but I just was so eager that I wanted to take what I was getting from door A and I wanted to pour that in door B. And what I was getting from door B, I want to pour it in door A, or even potentially create a door C, you know, take both and create a door C. And so I think that's part of my experience, you know, just kind of like wanting. I mean, how did you all feel like that as well? Kind of like, I like what you said earlier, Kenny. You said when you first went to Madison, what did you say, lending?
Yeah, I had a lot to lend, but I had a lot to learn too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I would definitely agree with that. There was, I think, this idea for me was, okay, I'm coming, like Jeremy said, I'm coming from, you know, the Baptist tradition, and then some Pentecostal and charismatic style in music and my approach to worship leadership. And a thought in my mind was, okay, how do I bridge this gap between this way I led here and the way they worship here? And I didn't know what that looked like, you know, until I actually started to do it and actually implement it. And to be honest, it was some trial and error. And it was like you said, I wanted to take a little bit of this from here and a little bit of that from there and bring it together from here. But then over here, I'm realizing, oh my God, I'm losing them over here. Okay, but I gotta turn it around and make it, you know. And so I guess to answer your question, yes, I definitely wanted to bridge the gap, so to say, between the cultures, and almost kind of make it feel like, how do I say, like this is not what Israel says, it's not a black and white thing, it's a kingdom thing, right? It's like, how do I make this a kingdom thing? How do I make us, how do I engage us in worship and to a point where we're not thinking about, you know, is this a gospel song? Is this a contemporary song? You know, and those were thoughts that would go through my mind a lot as I was leading.
That's good. Were you going to share about that as well, Jeremy?
Yeah, you know, I would say that there was definitely and still is a passion and a hunger to see that. One thing that I was thinking about as you were talking, Kenny, is I think that for me, I noticed in stepping in those different veins, like you're saying, you would do some that would draw others, but then you would lose some over here. So you're always in this constant dance of trying to figure out what is going to appeal to some is not going to draw others, and vice versa. And there's a word that comes to mind, and that's rejection. Because there's a rejection that happens on either side, and then there's this dynamic that's created in our minds of, well, what are we doing wrong, and how are we not reaching everyone together? And so I think a lot of the tension that churches and leaders struggle with today, especially in these times, is how do we create an experience that is embracing of all these different cultural genres, but at the same time draws hearts from that same spectrum. And I found it to be really difficult. I can remember in the late 90s, that's weird to say, but I remember in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the Wow Worship CDs first came on the scene. And so I would go to Baker Bookhouse and I would get like the Wow Worship Green and the Wild Worship Orange and Yellow and Red, and I had all those books, and I would go through and listen to songs like Traded My Sorrows and Open the Eyes of My Heart. I remember when Open the Eyes of My Heart first hit the sound the sound that was happening in churches, and I remember thinking, okay, this is a song that I think will translate in the charismatic expression as well as with my white, young adult brothers and sisters, or the others that I was trying to reach in that way. And oftentimes like Kenny said, that trial and error piece was so, it was scary, but at the same time, it was exciting because you didn't know from what week to what week, what songs you were going to compile that would draw that worship experience into a rich time of really just giving God glory and entering into his presence. But I'm digressing from the point. Another piece that I think was really pivotal in that was recognizing that even though there was rejection from either side in different ways, it wasn't an intentional rejection that saying we don't want to experience God's presence, but help us to experience God's presence in a way that we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So keep us in this place, but don't give us that little nudge or that little taste that shifts us here, because God's presence isn't in that. It's not in the hand clapping and the hands raising, as I would hear people say, or I'm never going to be a hands raising person. It's in me sitting here and being quiet and reflective. So there's all this balance that's included in that as well.
And the fear of the unknown. You got one side afraid, oh, they're going to keep us too long. We're going to be here for 2 hours. And that's not the case, because we don't all like to be in church for 2 or 3 hours either.
Right.
But that's the stereotype, that we just going to be in church all day. Don't keep us too long. And then the other side, don't give us too much, all these words and all these lyrics. Just give us Jesus, 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 Jesus. And we're going to shout till the night is over, Then we're going to dance all night. So you got all these fears of the unknown, and that's what creates the tension as well.
Yeah. I want to speak to that piece of rejection that you said, Jeremy. That's a real thing. And I think it's important to point out that we have to continue to lead while we're discerning that people are not receiving. And that is a challenge.
Yes.
Man, it's hard.
To be in a space where you simply want people to encounter God. It ain't about you. You want people to encounter God, but you feel like I'm losing them. And how do I get them to focus back? Is it, like you said, is it this song? Is it this, did I pick the wrong song today?
And adding to that also, Kenny, that piece of losing them, but not wanting to cross over into a place where the worship experience or the moment is turning to a time of entertainment. Because I'm not here to entertain you.
Right.
I'm not here to make you feel good. I'm not here to tickle your ears or to help you feel that this is supposed to be some comfortable experience. I'm here really just as an usher to help you see God's presence and experience that.
Right. And so it really takes the Holy Spirit to get you back on track, to help you navigate an atmosphere where some people may not be with you in that moment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It takes that, as well as the communication from all ends. I'm having those moments of even teaching the congregation. So if I'm a person of color and I get hired in to lead worship at a predominantly white church, which I've never had that happen to me, but I would imagine we're gonna move to that segment, because I want to hear both of you all's angle on that point. But having that conversation, or having the opportunity to educate your congregation about your style or your culture, so they won't move in with these fears or these stereotypes and things. So I've always led worship in predominantly Black church. I've attended me and my siblings were the only Blacks at a Christian school, in the mid-90s, I should say. The mid-90s. Wow, we sound so ancient.
90s.
Right.
In my middle school, early mid-90s middle school, I went to a Christian school, and we were the only Blacks, me and my 3 siblings, Christian school. And so we would have chapel. So I was first introduced to Hosanna integrity music. I was introduced to Hillsong. I was introduced to Lord, I lift your name on high, and all of the hand movements and all that stuff. And then, but also that was my experience of multiculturalism. And then also in my adult life, working at Calvin University, and being exposed to multiple Christian Reformed churches and conferences in the Calvin Institute of Christian Worship. So I've had opportunities to lead there, but I've never been hired in as a staff pastor, staff worship pastor or worship director at a predominantly white church. So I kind of want to shift our congregation to that mode. Our congregation who's typing in. Oh!
Wait a minute.
I want to shift our conversation and congregation who's watching to be, let's talk about that. Being hired in a church where you are the person of color and your congregation predominantly white. Let's talk about that. And I wanted that question to also segue to, have you ever felt like a token?
Yes. Okay, so we'll answer that one now. Okay, so here's the thing. In the Black church, for me, the concept of being hired in was foreign. Okay, typically in a Black church, you move up in ranks. You know, you're there for a little bit, and it's like, okay, you went through that. All right, you're ready for this next level, and okay, you did good there. Okay, now you're ready for this next. So that piece of being hired in, that was completely new to me. When I applied for the position at Madison, I really didn't know whether or not I was gonna get the job or not. I didn't, because for me, it was like, I don't know if I have enough multicultural experience to kind of fit the job description. And what was the other piece of your question, Nate?
Have you ever felt like the token?
So, but the other piece, the first part.
What did I say? Oh, just your experience as being hired in as a person of color in a predominantly white congregation. Right.
Okay, so when I got into the position, it was really important for me to get an understanding of the culture of the church, especially the worship culture, and what type of songs they were singing, because I could have came in and said, hey, look, I'm here and I'm singing all these songs that I know, and I'm gonna bring my style up in here, and that's how it's gonna go. I think I was smarter than that. And I came in and I said, well, what type of songs are you guys singing? What are you doing? And I started singing some of those songs and incorporating those songs into the worship sets. But did I feel like the token? Probably. I think what made my decision, for me to make the decision to go to Madison, was that there were other leaders of color at Madison, so that I was not going to be the only one. And that was really important to me. Have I felt like a token in other spaces? Yes, I have. Definitely. It's a difference. It's a big difference when, now one of the things about you, Nate, and Jeremy, like you all, introduced me to a lot of spaces as well. So Nate, I was able to travel with you and go into a lot of multicultural spaces, and the same with Jeremy, I was able to go into a lot of multicultural spaces, and the same with Ken, I was able to go into a lot of multicultural spaces. Those spaces were unfamiliar to me, but the thing that I had was that I was able to go back to my home church, and I was able to have that space, right, where I can truly be free to be who I am, right? But when I go out and I minister at maybe a church that is predominantly white, I might have to change my approach a bit. But that's okay, because I'm going back home later, right? Well, coming to Madison, now Madison is home. And this is my space. So how do I operate in this space? This is what I'm thinking. How do I operate in this space without completely losing who I am? without completely neglecting who I am as an individual, as a worship leader, without assimilating.
Yeah.
And those are things that I had to constantly ask myself the question: are you doing that because you're trying to fit in, you know, or are you doing it because whatever other reason? And sometimes I would make decisions because of something that a congregant said to me after church. You know, you're not doing enough hymns, or you're not singing, and it's like, okay, so when I do the schedule again, I'm doing more hymns because I don't want these people to be thrown off by me. I want them to be, you know, comfortable with me. I don't want them to be uncomfortable. And so somewhere in the sense the article talks about this, you do have to neglect or put aside some of your preferences or your approaches in order to lead in a way where it can be more palatable for people. I think that the term that the guy used in the article, to be more palatable. And so in my time there, I constantly am challenging myself, like, am I being my true self? Am I being who I am? And I actually have had people come to me, this is the truth. I have had people come to me in the beginning stages and say, we don't feel like you're really being like, you know, yourself. And I'm like, that's weird. You don't even know me. You're picking up on that. And then as time went on, people are like, I feel like you're becoming more comfortable. I feel like you are really, you know, giving us yourself and who you are. And so that's something that I have to constantly, you know, rehearse in my mind, you know, when I'm leading.
So it sounds like there's been some people in the congregation and in your experience that have wanted the authentic you, but then there also been some who's kind of pegging you into a certain box.
Sure. Why aren't you doing? Yeah.
We want you to do this, and that.
Yeah, because I've actually had people say to me, "You don't do a lot of gospel," and I would expect for you to do gospel. And so
they thought you were Nate Glasper. Are you Nate Glasper?
That too. You know who Nate Glasper is? You remind me of Nate Glasper or Jeremy Simpson. You know, and that's sad. And that's sad. I will tell you why that's sad. Because there needs to be more of us represented in the community.
Right.
And so when there's not a lot of us represented, they just mix us all up.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's happened before. I don't know if it's happened to you guys.
Yeah.
You Jeremy Simpson? Are you? I'm like, do I look tall to you? I'm a shorty compared to Jeremy. You know. So, yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeremy.
You know, I'm reminded of my first professional call to full-time, you know, becoming minister of worship and creative arts, you know, going through the whole credentialing process and all of that. And I remember you asked, did we ever feel like the token? And so my first experience, I walked into the church and a lady said to me, she said, "Hey, come here." And so I walked over to her. She was a white woman, and she said, "I've outlasted every pastor and I'll outlast you." And so this was my first Sunday. I hadn't saying a word. I hadn't opened my mouth. And this is what she says. And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, Lord have mercy, what have I stepped into? And then the next conversation I had was with someone that let me know that another congregation member had let him know that when they, and you know what I mean by they, he said when they move into the neighborhood, the property values go down. So wow. As I look back and I think about, you know, all I was doing was trying to live into the call of God on my life. All I was doing was trying to live into this space that doesn't look like me, with these people that don't look like me and don't talk like me, and I don't look like them and don't talk like them. And at the same time, I was greeted with these words while trying to figure out how are we going to worship the same God with all of these differences? Because the way that you worship God and the way that I worship God are different. And it seems that the way that we approach discipleship is also different. And so I had to really learn what it was to deal with because really tokenism is just the false appearance of diversity. That's really all that it is. It's the false appearance of diversity. It's trying to make it seem like we're doing this and we're about this movement. And the question that I had to ask myself was, am I going to be a token or am I going to be an agent of change?
Right.
And realizing that when you step into a homogenous congregation as a leader of color, whether it's in worship, student ministry, pastoral teaching ministry, administration, whatever the case may be, you have to realize when you step into those circles and in those leadership positions, you are stepping into a position of becoming a pioneer. Absolutely. You are blazing a trail for those that will come after you. You are stepping into moments where the water is uncharted, no one has been there, and in a lot of those circles, the senior pastor, who tends to be white male, is looking for you, the black male, to help his church become more diverse.
Yeah.
And what that means is we are looking for you to sing songs that we don't sing, but we want you to sing the songs that you sing so that we can have someone to blame for why the congregation is angry after you sing the song.
Right.
Can I get an amen, somebody? We want you to be the we want you to be the person that we send out in front of the charge to put together the multicultural 100-voice choir and, you know, do the citywide thing while we sit back and try to figure out and not offer support, but how to see this thing succeed. So I had to learn with a crash course that I didn't want to be a token. And that was difficult because what I found becoming a leader of color in an all-white congregation was that now my friends who looked like me, that played with me and sang with me, not all of them, I'm not talking about you, Nate and Kenny, and some of those watching, but I found that some of my friends that looked like me no longer wanted to participate with me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand why, because in my head I'm thinking, I haven't changed, my heart hasn't changed. The style of worship that I'm embracing might be a little different, but this is a way for us to bridge a gap and to call from other cultures different spices to the meal. I've often said throughout the years, the best worship experiences include seasonings from different cultures. Absolutely. There's nothing worse than when someone invites you to their home and they make a dish that isn't seasoned right. You haven't used any kind of Lowry's, no kind of garlic salt or enough. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing worse than that. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, why reject your brother instead of saying, you know what, we want to come alongside and support you in this vision of seeing a church that reflects, you know, every tribe and nation and culture. So you have that piece coming from the people that you know, while on the other side, and this was, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but on the other side, what I found from my white brothers and sisters was from the younger ones, so maybe like the second generation and some of the older ones, more of an embrace to a different style. But it was what I found from some of the diehard, more elders, where we are not moving from what we have known. You are not, who are you to come in and tell us, number one, that anything is wrong? And no one's saying that what you're doing is wrong. What we're saying is that the Church of Jesus Christ should be one that represents every tribe and nation and language. What we're saying is that we're not waiting to heaven to worship with a multicultural church, but we are the Church of Jesus Christ today, and we exist as a multicultural church to bring heaven on earth. And so in facing that resistance, I had to learn that the tokenism was not to my detriment, but it was actually an undercover blessing, because I could use that tokenism as a way to say, well, guess what? Not only do I play gospel music, and not only do I only play gospel music sometimes, but I also play the pipe organ.
Right.
And not only do I play the pipe organ, but I can conduct a symphony orchestra.
Exactly.
And so guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull the pipe organ. Now I'm telling my secret. I'm going to pull the pipe organ into the gospel choir along with the orchestra, and you're going to experience a sound that you've not heard before. And from that sound, you're going to be wondering, well, is this what multicultural worship looks like? Is this the sound that we've been looking for that includes a few different rhythms and a couple different time signatures here and there, and maybe the swelling of a Hammond organ coming through the Leslie speaker, Shondo, somebody?
Come on.
This is what we're talking about. This is what we're looking at. And so I think that we have to, going back to what I said initially, we have to make the decision to not become the token, to stay true to who we are, to rise above the rejection that we face that comes from both sides, but to also use that tokenism as an advantage and as a way for us to really usher in the idea, the sound, the creativity, all of those pieces that create an experience that's truly diverse and that truly reflects the sound of heaven.
That's really good. That's good.
What I hear you saying also is being called on or asked to come to help shift a culture or shift a sound in the church is not a bad thing. It becomes bad when it's perverted.
It does, yes.
When it becomes perverted, or you just want to fit me in a 1 month of the year, come sing for our Black History Day, or
our multicultural mission
mission Sunday, when there's so much more that I'm educated in as it relates to music and worship.
Oh my gosh. And people don't realize when you bring in leaders like myself and yourself and Kenny into these white signings. Nate, you've been ministering in the Christian Reformed Church. Kenny, you now being a part of Madison, myself in the Christian Reformed Church, and now the United Methodist Church. When you bring these Black leaders into these circles, you cannot put, God, I don't know the term to use other than this, you can't put chains on the anointing,
right,
and expect us to remain into this circle of what you know is familiar, because the anointing breaks those chains of familiarity to launch us into something that's deeper and further. And aside from that, if congregations have not done the hard, thoughtful work of what it is to lay the groundwork of their congregations of saying, look, we recognize that our church is not diverse. We recognize that we're not racially diverse. Our sound is not diverse. Our leadership is not diverse. Recognize that you cannot just hire a Black man or Black woman or brown man into a position and put the pressure and expectation of changing this church on them.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen by singing Lord, I Lift Your Name on High in reggae style in 6/8. That's not going to do it.
Right.
That's not going to do it.
No, you didn't.
I did. I tried it and I did it. Yeah, I did.
You know what? That's so good, because often tokenism turns into I'm going to hire this person of color, and they're going to come in and they're going to completely change and shift the culture. And there is pressure that comes with that. And you feel like, you know, am I the person that's responsible to bridge this gap and to bring this all together? And you feel it sometimes. You definitely feel it. I know I have felt it coming into spaces and feeling like, okay, you know, am I the person that's going to bring this all together? And really, it's a collaborative effort. It's on all of us. It's all of us.
I feel like I'm talking too much, but Kenny, you just prompted something. I remember back in the day, we used to get called in to do conferences and stuff like that. And while I appreciated the opportunity to always be a part of a multicultural worship setting, I hated when the pressure was put on the worship team that, hey, we want you to put this together. Yep. We want you to bring the fire. We want you to bring this, and we want you to bring that. And in my mind, I would think to myself, wait a minute, all of the expectations that you're placing on this writer that you want me to do, these are corporate expectations. So the outcome that you're looking for is not going to come from me standing here playing the keyboard and singing. The outcome that you're looking for is going to come from hearts of people that are generally surrendered and hungry for the presence of God, that are coming together in a corporate and collective way and saying, God, here we are as your people that have been gathered and sent from different places, coming together to tabernacle together to say, we want you, forgive us, and allow your presence to come and be among us. That's where the impact is going to happen. That's where true multicultural worship is going to be birthed and take place.
And that's on all of us.
It can cause for racial healing as well.
Absolutely.
In those moments of worship, I've been invited to do conferences where we're in the meeting room in a planning session, and they're like, okay, we need a white person, we need a Hispanic person. If you can find an Asian person, you have any students who from Korea or China, you know, maybe you can get them to come along. And I've been a part of those things, and I fell into those moments like, okay, let me call Jasmine Hurtado. Let me call somebody, you know, shout out to Jasmine. But, you know, you're constantly on the phone and you fall into those moments. Like this display, this is just what we're looking for. It's just a function. It's just we're just putting on a show or entertainment. That's what entertainment is.
Yeah.
You know, opposed to us like saying, are you guys ready for this change in your heart, opposed to just putting on a show for these people?
Yeah. And if you ask me to come to your conference, or if you ask me to come into your space, let me be who I am.
Oh my God. Talk about it, Kenny.
Oh, put a pin right there. That's part two.
About it,
I was going to say. You
Don't
know,
ask me
diverse people.
Yeah.
But I want you to sing A, B, C, and D. Don't sing.
Don't do that.
Because ultimately what you're communicating to us is, we want you, but we don't want all of you.
Right. Do it like us.
Do it like the way we do it. Make us feel comfortable.
Right. Black
man, black woman, Hispanic man, Hispanic woman, Asian man, Asian woman. Do it to a degree. Like we don't want all, don't be too charismatic.
Right. Don't go too far.
Don't go too far. And sometimes I've fallen into that trap. Oh my God, am I being too black right now? Am I being too Pentecostal? Am I being too charismatic right now?
Somebody said that part.
That part. and so, you know, I've been in moments where I'm like, you miss a move of God because you're so you're in your head and you're so focused on, am I losing folks? But the glory is here.
Right.
The glorious healing is here. Deliverance is here. And you're missing it because you're so hyper focused on if I'm being too black.
Right.
You know? And so
go ahead.
That's a major distraction. It's a major distraction. So if you call me and you ask me to come, allow me to be who I am. Now I have enough sense and I've done this long enough to not prolong or drag out anything.
Right.
Okay? Not all black people drag out music.
Exactly.
Okay? Or drag out worship.
I couldn't
have enough discernment to know when it's time to let up or keep going.
Yes.
All right. And but in all of it, allow me to be who I am. Allow me to be who I am.
I was going to say, shout out to, we've all been a part of the Calvin Institute Christian Worship Symposium. We've taught at some of those. I'm thinking of a time specifically, I think 2 years ago when Dr. Judith McAllister came to here to Calvin, and she led us, and she didn't alter who she was. She hollered, she screamed, she climbed.
Yes, she did.
To the highest scale, and they broke out in a praise break. And what I saw was this freedom.
I was all in the back running around.
Yeah. I saw this freedom and this liberty throughout that whole, and always shout out to John Wickley. I feel like the Worship Symposium is a great example of you can unapologetically, you can just be who you are. You don't even have to apologize. And I lost my train of thought. I said that to say, I remember after that, following that spring at Calvin University, we had our spring concert or something, and we had a guest that came, one of our students' guests, her aunt came, and she was just running around that whole auditorium, even those little steps that go up and I didn't stop her. I still got the video clip. And then we broke out into a praise break, and I just kept it going because I was like, why? Gone are the days where we just like, all right, y'all, go ahead and set it up. Let that woman praise the Lord in her cultural context.
Yeah.
And not be ashamed of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And everything that everything is not a show, and I think sometimes what happens is we are stereotyped in that way, especially sometimes because gospel music sometimes can come off as a little entertaining.
Yeah.
In certain areas.
Can all music come off as entertaining though?
It can. But what I'm saying is, I think what happens is because I've been approached by white people that have said like, this particular style of music feels like a performance, compared to a more contemporary style or whatever. And I said that to say like, us praising and worshiping and being free and liberal in our worship is not a show. You know, it's not a show.
Kenny, you just sparked something that I wanted to share really quick. At After I moved to Michigan from Connecticut, I came to Kalamazoo. The church that I was serving in, I was pastor of community life and worship. So my job encompassed making sure that liturgy was prepared, making sure that worship was ready to go, and then also overseeing all of our community life aspects, connections, communications, life groups, all that stuff, and then preaching and teaching. And there was a gentleman in our church that was 80 plus years old. And I remember one Sunday we were singing some song. I can't remember what the song was, but it was one of those high Sundays. And for those of you that are tuning in, and both Nate and Kenny, you know what I'm talking about as a worship leader of color. A high Sunday is, I would describe it as the moments where the worship feels kind of like home. So while you know you're not home, there's just a certain atmosphere that is created that it feels like home. And so in that particular Sunday, I was kind of nervous to extend the moment of worship through song because I didn't know what kind of backlash I would get on the other side. But the presence of God was so strong, I could not neglect what was happening in that moment. And so I just went for it. And if you all know me, I just went for it. Yeah. So we got done with the worship moment. And at the end of that service, this older gentleman came up to me and he said, I said, oh man, wasn't worship awesome, something like that today? Because I just assumed as he was approaching me, that's what he was going to say.
Yeah.
And so he said to me, well, no, it would have been awesome if I could have felt the presence of God and not heard all that loud noise. So then I'm thinking, oh man, so the vacuum cleaner is on, all my joy is just, it's already that. Right. So I'm thinking, man, we had a Sunday where it felt like we were having church, and now you're telling me this. So to make a longer story short, we continued to go forward. And I'm thinking back about what you said, Kenny, where you said you would do something some week that drew others, and then other weeks it was pushing some of those same folks away.
Yeah.
And so in this particular week, we had done it was an 8 hands piano thing. So a bunch of pianists, we all got together and did this big 8 hands compilation of songs. And then we did some other music that Sunday that was out of the ordinary. And so at the end of that service, I remember we had done the song, I Surrender, like a rushing wind, come and move within. Lord, have your way in me. Like a mighty storm, rushing in my soul, have your way in me. And so the same gentleman comes up to the platform, and he's just visibly, you can tell that he was crying and he was in tears. And I said to him, I said, what was going on? He said, I get it. He said, I get it. He said, I get what you've been saying. I get what you've been talking about. And so I said, well, what do you mean? I knew what he was talking about, but I wanted him to tell me what you're saying. So he said, I get it. He said, it's not that you're trying to force anything for me to do. You're not trying to force me to do something. He said, you're simply inviting us into this conversation that's already taking place. And I was so happy on the inside, because I was like, that's it. It's a conversation. It's a dialogue that's happening between the 24 elders and the angels and the creatures already. We are just inviting you into that dialogue. We're inviting you into that dance. We're laying down our thoughts. We're laying down our agenda. We're laying down our ways. And we're saying, come bring your sound, and come bring your sound, and come bring your sound and your sound. And let's all bring our sounds together, and let's create this offering and bring it before the throne. And I say that story because I think so many times in these church circles, and especially in West Michigan, because we're surrounded by this bastion of Reformed thought. And let's just keep it real. In this Reformed thought, so many folks are steeped in this idea. And I love my Reformed brothers and sisters, and I love the theology, but we're so held and captivated by the idea of this great theology and this great idea of who God is, but we are terrified of moving from this place of just knowing who God is, and not even knowing who he is, but knowing about who he is, but really actually moving down to our heart and experiencing that knowledge in a way that creates who we are. We don't want to get too close, because when we get to that place of intimacy, there's this change that happens. And not only does multicultural worship introduce its head in that, but then discipling others in the way of the church looking like black people and white people and brown people and serving in mission. And now it begins to have this idea of worship is not just this thing that we come to on Sundays, but it's something that flows out of the evidence of what's in our hearts, and all these things begin to come into play. And so I think that people often tend to shy away from stepping into true, diverse, multicultural worship, however you want to describe that, because it doesn't just open the door for having a meal with people that don't look like you, but it really calls us to the core of the gospel. And that gospel is one that includes black people and red people and white people and people that don't think the same way and people that don't act the same way and people that don't sin like you do. Hello, somebody. And people that don't worship like you do. It calls us into a congregational moment that unites us with heaven. Be quiet now. I'm talking too much.
No, it's so good. It's so good. I'm just absorbing all of this. And something you said too triggered a thought is that when people are a part of multicultural often the reason why people shy away from multicultural worship experiences is because they have to give up their preferences.
Right.
They have to give up their preferences. It's like, you know, and I've said this on many occasions to people. Yes, that may not be the preference for you. That may not be the song that you like, but it's blessing somebody else.
Yes.
So one of the things that I had to learn, you know, when I came into a predominantly white setting was that I didn't know a lot of those songs.
Yeah.
Real songs.
Same.
So there was a lot of songs that I had to learn, but it was like the richness of the lyrics.
Wow.
You know, that just captured me and you know, gave me this desire and passion to worship in a different way, you know, but I had to open myself up for that, you know, and you got to give up your preferences. And so often what happens is we harden our hearts. We come into an atmosphere and it's like, well, I don't know that song, or I'm not comfortable. I'm not familiar with this. And so I won't worship. But when did worship become attached to your preference and
your
music?
preference?
Right? Like when did it?
Never.
I don't know. I don't see anywhere in the Bible where it says, "Thou shalt worship when thou hear your favorite song."
Right. Never.
You know, that's when you worship. You know, or when it's within your cultural context, that's when you worship. You know, I mean, a lot of this stuff is cultural, anyways.
Cultural.
Right.
And so
very much so.
Yeah, and so, but a lot of people will shy away from the multicultural experience because it's like, I got too much to. It's that I've heard people say it's too much work.
Yeah,
wow.
Too much work.
My passion.
It is a lot of work.
I don't want to work. I don't want to. I just want to worship. I don't want to work.
Yeah, or like my pastor says a lot. People have the either or mentality opposed to in and you know, and I think that we shy away. Well, people shy away from the in addition to. It's okay to join, and that's where your bridge will be built. But if you just bring a little bit here and a little bit there, you're gonna constantly clash. You're not willing to join together and have that bridge built. So, wow, this is good. I got a couple more questions. The ones we were gonna do, we kind of went right into them anyway. But I got two more. But those who are watching, I see your posts coming through. I want you, if you all have any questions that you would like us to discuss, feel free to type them in right now. Feel free to type them in. Thank you all for tuning in. I was going to ask you guys, have you ever felt as if you were doing something wrong, just totally wrong? I almost felt like, you know, I can't do this no more. I'm not, you know, let's talk about that pressure of feeling inadequate, that pressure of feeling not good enough. Knowing, you know, we started a conversation saying, you know, this is what I've been doing, my first time experience, and I've always desired this, you know, but then you go to that moment of feeling it's not good. Maybe I got the wrong desire. Maybe I got my desires mixed up.
You'll have what it takes.
Yeah. You know, I have definitely felt that way. And the thing that happens when you feel that, it's funny because as a Black male in general, I think that we can tend to feel that way because number one, you know, largely our color, the name Black comes with negative connotations. It's dark. There's fear associated with that. And then when you add the male part to it, and then for someone like me that's 6'5", you know, 240 pounds, when you see me, you don't know me, there's fear because you don't know what I would bring. I have felt like I was doing something wrong on my first Sunday as the new worship pastor at a church, and the ushers approached the altar as I was walking toward the altar because they thought that I was just someone approaching it. They didn't know that I was one of the new pastors on staff. I have felt wrong when I was asked to put together a worship set that, you know, sounded like songs that I knew. And after I executed the worship set to the best of my ability with the help of the Holy Spirit, I was told that I was causing division and that I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do, or wasn't accomplishing the task that I was asked to accomplish. I felt like I was doing something wrong when I was basically told I was too black, I was too loud, I was too much. I felt what it feels like to be like, hey, I've done something wrong. And those aren't good feelings. I know what it feels like to feel like you've done something wrong when you haven't, and you've had to defend yourself, and you kind of take a step back and think, wait a minute, what am I defending? We're in this to lift up the name of Jesus. So what am I defending? I'm not on trial for leading worship. I say all of that to say that when you step into the shoes of Ken Reynolds, and you step into the shoes of the George Davis II, and you step into the shoes of the C.J. Greers and others who have paved the path for us today, who have already served in these predominantly white churches, you step into a mantle of leadership that is not established by man. And I think that that's a hard concept to understand oftentimes in our church structures, because we think, like Kenny, you said something earlier, in the Black church, we kind of go up the ranks by the longevity that we have in the congregation.
Right.
Whereas in more white churches, you go up the ranks by your education and, you know, how well you interview. Yeah. And so what that creates is this idea that we have to achieve something on our own. And the reality is we're not achieving anything on our own. Right. What we're doing is stepping into becoming a partner with the mission of the gospel to disciple people in understanding what worship is. Yeah, that's really what it is. And as we do that and go about this process of discipleship, let's realize that as we're being discipled and as we're discipling, there are pieces in the relationship that are broken. There are pieces in the relationship that are ugly. There are pieces in the relationship that are just sinful because we are fallen and broken people. But as worship leaders, we are called and anointed and appointed by God to step into these moments of discipleship and to say, Lord, here we are. Mm-hmm. And what we have might not be much. I can't run. I can't do this. I can't do that. Right. But the little ability that I have, I offer to you. And I say, hey, here, take it and use it. Use these gifts, that the people of God that embrace these gifts would be able to be ushered into and ministered to by your presence. That's the goal of what we're going after. But realizing that being a person of color, especially in an all-white congregation or predominantly white congregation, will often make us feel that we've done something wrong because there's a misunderstanding of that culture. And oftentimes the way that we communicate is not very synchronized. So what I might be trying to communicate in a worship moment might totally be misunderstood in the way that my brother or sister might have understood it or even read my intention, simply because we communicate differently. And so what I think a lot of the breakdown is, and a place that we can cause a deeper growth and a help in the body of Christ, is to truly look at our moments of leadership as leaders of color in all white congregations or predominantly white congregations as moments that are calling the saints to discipleship. This is a moment that calls us to discipleship. And what does that look like? It looks like us praying. It looks like us listening. It looks like us reading. It looks like us opening up our mouths and worshiping God together and realizing that your experience and my experience are different, will always be different and have been different. But together, as we become submitted to the process of discipleship, we can gain a deeper understanding and knowledge of what true diverse worship looks like. And to be honest, I wish that in the same way that we have erased so many different church terms, I wish that we could erase the term diverse worship, not because I don't think that it's important, but because it should be a key factor in anything relating to the gospel of Jesus Christ being communicated to the world. It should just be a key factor. It should be a non-negotiable. It shouldn't even be a point of conversation.
Yeah.
It should just be assumed that when we gather together as the church, it's going to be diverse. It's going to reflect the culture and sound of heaven. And I get so frustrated when I hear people say, well, we want diverse worship, but where we are and in our geographic location, in our cultural context, we can't provide those experiences. Well, guess what? Your worship might not always include people that have different skin tone than you because of your geographic location. Let's talk about our brothers and sisters in different continents throughout the world. But it changes your mindset in the way that you approach God and in the way that you love your brothers and your sisters by how you approach diverse worship. That's where it begins. That's how we grow into this greater context of what it means to be the church. You know, they often say when you get to a certain age in your adulthood, you come into your fuller self. And I believe, especially in this hour in 2020, especially in this pandemic season, that God is releasing a call to his bride, to his church, to come into your fuller self. Come into your fuller self and stop staying on the fringes. Stop staying on the sidelines. Stop standing back and giving excuses as to why you can't do this and to why your church is still doing the same thing that it's been doing. And there's no difference between the segregation and the 11 o'clock hour in 2020 than there was in 1950. Stop giving excuses and actually step into what I'm calling you to do. I don't want to look at the end of my life in the same way that I don't want to stand before God and have him ask me, why didn't you preach my word with excellence?
Yeah.
I don't want to stand before the Father and have him ask me, why didn't you love your neighbor as yourself? Why didn't you go after my heart for all people? Why didn't you go after this vision of Revelation 7:9 in a real way? Because the Church of America has gotten real comfortable thinking, I'm going to go there. The Church of America has gotten really comfortable thinking that it's okay for us to stay in our segregated ways as long as our salvation is secure. Yeah. We've gotten very comfortable thinking it's okay to stay in our segregated ways as long as we know that we're bound toward heaven. But I want to tell you something. If we can't get it together now, what makes us think we're going to get it together in eternity?
That's real good.
We're to be the answer to his prayer now.
Yeah, I shared this with these brothers before we started the call. Many events we had, and we hear the term, if there's diverse, and you all who are timed in, you've heard this before. Whenever there's a diverse event or citywide MLK something, and it's a wonderful service, someone gets on the mic and say, you know, this is what heaven will be like. Or why can't we do that now? You know, because after we say that, we go right back to our segregated.
Same thing.
Exactly.
You know, when that heaven experience, we can duplicate that now. We can duplicate that now, and I think that that's something worth discovering. Kenny, that same question for you as well. What was that question? Have you ever felt as if you were doing something wrong?
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely have felt like I've been in some times where I have done some, or felt like I've done some things wrong. I think specifically an area of am I doing enough gospel? Am I doing enough contemporary? Am I doing enough hymns? Somebody says you're not doing enough hymns. I sing more hymns. They say, oh my God, thank you so much for singing more hymns. And somebody comes to me and say, why aren't you singing enough gospel? And then I say, okay, well, let me incorporate more gospel. And then you get commentary that maybe it's the songs are too repetitive. Or, okay, well, maybe I need to pull back on some of the repetitive music, right? And so, yeah, you feel like you're doing something wrong, or you feel like you have to constantly second guess yourself. You know, and that really causes you to be in a space where you really can't focus on the big picture, and that's really being at the feet of Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, really, that's the goal. It is for us to encounter God and for us to be in his presence. And so, yeah, I've definitely had moments where I have felt like, am I getting this right? And am I the person for this? And honestly, I've had people come up to me and encourage me and don't give up, you know? But it's not for, it's not easy. It's not an easy thing. but I'm always reminded at the end of the day why I'm called to do this, and um, and what the purpose is, and that is for us to encounter the presence of God.
Yeah.
And that's not going to come easy all the time. It's going to come with challenges sometimes. And so, yeah, definitely, I have felt like I have done some wrong things, and sometimes it wasn't necessarily I was wrong, just second guessing myself.
Just that pressure, like Jeremy was talking
The
about.
pressure, yeah, the pressure, definitely the pressure.
Second guess ourselves. Second guess. You know, by the time you walk in the building, you like, my presence here is offending someone.
Wow.
You know, I just walk through the door. I'm having a good day, but I walk through the door, and my very presence is an offense to someone.
Absolutely. I mean, I've gone into spaces before, and being the only Black person or the Black male, or my wife and I being the only Black people in the audience, and we're worshiping, and people staring at us.
Yeah.
People looking at us, and it's like, oh God, let me focus. let me worship. You know, yeah, and yeah.
Interesting. We had a question that came through. I'm taking a turn a little bit by Arthur Cohn. He goes, has there been a fair exchange of culture between gospel and CCM, or has it been lopsided?
Oh, wow.
I feel like the gospel community right now is really adopting the contemporary sound.
Yeah.
I mean, you're hearing it a lot now in gospel music. You know, there's and then on the other end in contemporary music, you know, sometimes it's funny because I got, like, you know, you have in your car, you have the station 1, the station 2, station 3, right? So my first station is like the contemporary station, the second station is the gospel station, and I flip between them while I'm in the car. And so I feel like hearing Chris Tomlin right now. Okay, well, I want to hear a little JJ Harrison right now. You know, so it just will switch. And sometimes I'll listen to the contemporary, and I'm hearing this gospel edge. And I'm hearing these people run in the background. I'm like, listen to these runs in the background, or listen to this gospel choir sound. So I think that there definitely is an exchange that is happening. I don't know. What do you think, Jeremy?
I think that there's an exchange that's happening. I would say historically it has been lopsided. I don't think that Black gospel has gotten the same.
Absolutely not.
While we have notoriety, we haven't gotten the same haven't had the same influence or presence reflected in our leadership as CCM has. But I think that there has been this turn and lean where there have been more inflections on both sides. I think also that there's starting to become, I mean, it's 2020. And I think that the generation that was more opposed to that is beginning to die. And so I think that the younger generation is starting to say, this is just the sound that we want. And the sound that we want is a sound of all people. We don't want a sound that's just this or just that. We want one that reflects a corporate expression. I believe also that a lot of independent writing is beginning to become more prominent, especially in our kind of Black or churches of color representation. You know, I think that they were starting to see that more throughout the scope of worship music and doxological resources throughout the world. I mean, you think about a lot of the new hymnals that have been produced in the last 5 to 7 years include genres from all around the world, from Black gospel to Asian fusion to other songs and sounds that are included in those hymnals now. So churches, I think, are starting to turn, and I think that the more that we begin to see and it's not that I don't respect or honor the older generation, because they're absolutely necessary as bridge builders to the future. But I think that as some of those older mindsets and ways are beginning to literally die off, we will continue to see more of a shift in what that worship focus looks like, because a lot of those battles of volume and things like that, you don't have as much of that struggle now. And also technology continues to improve and get better. So we're finding ways that people are becoming, I'll put it this way, there are less and less excuses for us to do this thing together. The excuses are becoming less and less. And the opportunities for us to do it are more and at a premium at this point, I would say.
Absolutely.
I definitely think it's a problem too that you know, I think when I transitioned to Madison, that was my first time using CCLI Song Select. And when I did want to start introducing gospel music was not available on Song Select and CCLI. And for those of you that don't know what Song Select and CCLI is, just a licensing that
software.
And a software that you can use to get charts and music for songs. And mainly it's a database for a lot of contemporary music. If any gospel music is on it, it's super old gospel.
Yeah.
And maybe a couple top tenors.
Yeah.
Or like a Hezekiah Walker, or maybe a couple Kirk Franklin songs or something like that. But most of the majority of gospel music that you're hearing now, you're not going to find it on Song Select or CCLI. And often white musicians are intimidated by gospel music.
Yes.
And so that's a challenge sometimes that we face as African Americans when we come into white settings, is that we may want to do, you know, some gospel music, but we often feel like we need to not do it or come down because it might be too hard, or they might be too intimidated, or there are no charts available.
Right.
You know, so I definitely would love to see some work go into having more gospel artists in Song Select and CCLI.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we are well over our hour. I feel like we got to continue this conversation, definitely. But I do want to let you all know that both Jeremy and Kenneth got some music out there in this World Wide Web and iTunes and Spotify.
You said www.
www.
But no, check them out. Kenneth Henderson, Jeremy Simpson, they have some music out there, wonderful music. We've done some collaboration. And even with that whole CCM Bridge, you know, and Gospel Bridge, our music, we reflect that even in our music.
Yeah, you'll hear that, definitely.
Check that out. You want a good example of that, you know. We have Cindy says, keep going. Cindy wrote but we're going to keep this going. This last question that we're going to want to close out with, which was one of the questions on our fire, is multi-ethnic, multicultural worship the answer to racial inequality? And I think that's kind of we're gonna land at, and something even that you listening in, you should think about. You know, is this the answer? Are we going the right route, or what's happening? Is it something we got to keep working on? Are we not there yet? You know, like in the Black church, if you were tearing for the Holy Ghost, you ain't there yet, baby. Got to come on back.
Come on back. Come to tomorrow night revival. And we're gonna be here till about 1 o'clock in the morning. We're gonna pray with the Holy Ghost, because you're gonna get it.
That's where we are as a church body. We ain't there yet, you know.
I definitely think that, like you said, Nate, we are making efforts, but we're not there yet. And there's definitely more work that needs to be done. I think there's more conversations that need to be had, more elephants that need to be addressed. And I want to say to you, thank you for this opportunity, for this platform tonight, because these conversations are so important. If you would have caught me maybe like 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have this conversation, because there will be this fear that I would offend. You know, and I think this time of conversation is important because it allows people to see our perspective. And to hear our experiences. No, by no means, I am not an expert of multicultural worship. Okay, so don't try to book me and say like, okay, well, come fix my church and make it a multicultural church. I'm not an expert.
Don't call me either.
Okay. I'm not an expert, but what I am speaking from is experience, and I'm still learning. Right? We have to be in a space where we are continuing to learn.
That's key.
And willing to be in relationship with people that don't look like us and don't sound like us.
That's good.
Yeah.
You gotta be willing to put yourself in spaces that are not familiar to you. And that's a piece of that reconciliation. That's a part of that growth and a part of that development. And so, yeah, I appreciate this platform tonight, but we got some work to do.
Yeah. Tom Vanderwell wrote a blog and he tagged us in it. But there was a line he wrote about you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And I think that's something that can also help build a bridge. We can't go into worship services and put this demand on worship pastors and worship leaders. We got to strip down those expectations. Become vulnerable and open to receive, and that may be spooky to some people who's not. That may be a charismatic term. Be open to receive.
Right.
But don't be afraid of those things, because it's just as scary to us to go in those deep places.
Absolutely.
But we know that that's something that could benefit your life. And so you have to trust us that we're not trying to lead you astray. We're definitely not trying to lead you to a 3-hour service. I don't even think people do that no more. Let's just put that on there. All my white brothers and sisters, no Black congregation does 3-hour services. That's just crazy.
They're doing it. You said a key word: trust.
Yeah.
Trust. Are you willing? And when I'm speaking to white congregations, those of you who have African American people or people of color in leadership, are you willing to trust the leadership and not challenge the leadership?
Yeah.
Are you willing to trust the leadership and not challenge the leadership? And I just want for that to stew with somebody. And what does challenge look like? Is it that you always have a complaint? Is it that you always have something to say? Is it that we're not doing things the way you feel comfortable with the way we should be doing it?
Right.
But do you truly trust us? And can you really come behind us and support us? It's not about us. I want to say that. It's not about us. But can we truly come together and walk this journey out together?
Yeah. We are in crazy times right now. This is a great time to lean and depend on one another, for this time. We can help each other out. But the complaining, that all needs to cease. What are we doing for online worship? Stuff like that. Y'all stop with these emails and these opinions and stuff.
Yep.
There's already so much pressure on us as worship leaders in a time like this. But the pressure is uncalled for.
You never know.
By the power invested in me.
Right. And Jeremy, you have operated in both roles, pastoral and worship leadership. You never know what your pastors and your leaders are dealing with behind closed doors.
No, you don't.
What conversations are happening at tables? You don't know what's being prayed in their prayer closet, in their prayer room. You don't know what's being deliberated by email, by phone conversation, via text. Okay? And it's important for us to, like you said, for us not to complain during this time, but how can we come alongside each other? How can we support each other, especially in a climate of racial tension?
Yeah.
There's a lot of tension right now.
Oh my goodness.
There's a lot of stress right now. People are dying. We're losing. Every time I look through my scroll, it's a rest in peace, and somebody's grieving. Really, are we going to really support each other, or are we really going to focus on you're not hearing the songs that you want to hear on the online stream?
Right.
Yeah.
Or these different things that we're complaining about. So are we truly going to trust our leadership?
Yeah. Jeremy, that question's back on you. That last question, is multi-ethnic, multicultural worship the answer to racial inequality?
I honestly wrestle with the answer to that. I go back and forth. There's a part of me that says, yes, absolutely. There's a part of me that says, I wonder. The hopeful side of me says yes. The hopeful side of me says that we can truly live into Jesus' prayer in John 17 so that we can see Revelation 7:9. It says to me, when I gather with my brothers and sisters that don't look like me, and God's presence just descends in a powerful way, it says yes. And it's in these moments that I question, especially with the racial tension that you talked about, Kenny. I have wondered and felt in this hour, and we didn't talk about this tonight, but where are the prophetic multicultural voices in this time? Where are the songs of the Lord to be released in this time that speak nothing but the word? And I'm not talking about we release racial healing in this hour. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying, where's the song of heaven that's being released in this hour for right now? That's what I'm talking about.
That's it.
And where are the prophets? Where are the prophetic voices in this time? Because I believe that we're living in a season where people are searching anyway, but people are searching like never before. We have been hit. 2020 is a year that I don't think any one of us will ever forget. And as people are walking through this pandemic with COVID-19, like you talked about, seeing, Kenny, on your timeline, people dealing with grief and loss of loved ones, loss of jobs, all these different changes and transitions that are happening in our culture. And then to add to that, the racial tension in our country, I believe that as people are searching, they're looking and desperate for true spiritual encounter. They're looking for God and don't realize it. And I think that in this hour, we have an opportunity, not just as Black worship leaders, but as brothers and sisters united in the kingdom, to say we're going to press in for the sound of worship that's to be released in the land now. And how will we enter his gates in a pandemic? How will we step into his courts in the midst of uncertainty and extreme frailty and tension in our nation? How will we stand and say that we're going to rejoice because God has made us glad in this hour? And so I think that, like Kenny says, while we are making headway, and I do believe that we're making headway, I think that there's a wind that is behind multicultural worship movements right now. At the same time that we're making headway, we have a lot of room to go, and we have a lot of room to grow. But I think about, in the same way that Paul admonished the church and prayed for us, my friends, may you grow in grace and in the knowledge of Jesus. And so I just pray that that's the same thing for us, for the church, for the Big C church, that we would grow in grace toward each other, and in the way that we worship together, that we'd be thoughtful of our other brothers and sisters and their experiences. And at the same time, we would be mindful that our goal and our mission is to lift up and exalt the name of Jesus, bottom line. Yeah. And outside of that, there's no other goal. If the goal is for great three-part harmony, if the goal is for having a cool moment just to say that we had a good time worshiping, if the goal is to say, well, I did this and I did that, and to build a resume, then we're missing it. Yeah. But if the goal comes back to him who is able to do abundantly and exceedingly above all we can ask or think, I think that we'll hit it.
Yeah.
I think we'll hit it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kenny.
I think Jeremy said something about the sound. And I think that there is a sound that really transcends all cultural boundaries.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's, and, I often wonder, in heaven, when we get to heaven, like, what will the sound be?
Mm-hmm. Man.
I mean, it ain't gonna be Kirk Franklin. It's not gonna be Tasha Cobbs. It's not gonna be Chris Tomlin. Like, it's going to be a completely different sound, a sound that we've never heard before. And when we really truly tap into the presence of God, we can tap into a sound that really is heaven on earth.
Yeah.
And you can't peg it.
Something's moving.
Right. You can't peg it. You can't say it's gospel. You can't say it's contemporary.
Yeah.
You can't say it's bluegrass. You can't say it's folk. It's kingdom.
Right.
It's kingdom.
Yeah.
It's the kingdom sound.
Every country has
glory.
Every country has a sound. You think of if you go to Asia, there's a sound even with their music. That's an Asian sound. Or you go to the Hispanic countries where our Hispanic brothers and sisters are. That's that Latin sound. But kingdom also has that sound. What is that sound of the kingdom of God's people? And I was pulling up 2nd Chronicles 20. Jehoshaphat and the children of Judah, and we know Judah is synonymous to praise, but Jehoshaphat, we know this story. Yolanda Adams made millions off the battles, not yours, but it's the Lord.
Oh yeah.
The thing I love about this story is Jehoshaphat set himself to pray, and in 2nd Chronicles 20 verse 9, he said, "Our God, won't you stop them? We are powerless against this mighty army that is about to attack us. We do not know what to do, but we are looking to you for help." And then down in 14, the Spirit of the Lord came upon one of the men standing there. His name was Jehaziel. Jehaziel was a Levite.
Yeah.
He was in the lineage of Asaph, who was a Levite.
Yes.
And they handled the music in the house of the Lord. The Spirit of the Lord fell upon a musician, fell upon a worship leader, someone who handled the holy things of God.
Yeah.
And so I think what my question is, I would like to say to you all who are watching, whether you're a worship leader or a musician, are you in a place where you can hear from God, or are you in a place where you can receive that prophetic sound in this pandemic? Are you in a place where you can receive that sound so we can help release that kingdom sound in a time like this? And that's something that we should definitely seek after. You know, we can post, we can argue, we can fight, we can debate, but in addition to that, those who handle the holy things, those who are positioned to create those atmospheres of worship, where are you in these times like this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, are you in a place where God is speaking to you, where we can stand and say, this battle is not ours, but it's the Lord's?
Yes, and sing the song of the Lord.
Sing the song of the Lord. I'm done.
Done? There was no questions? No other questions?
Oh, I didn't. Let me see. I didn't get any more questions. Just people telling us to keep going. I think we did enough for today. Here, Gerald Perry says, I think a lot of political differences have a lot to do with racial divisions in the church.
Absolutely.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I do too.
But thank you all. Seriously, we're gonna have to repeat this. You know, I was going to say this also. I was searching. I only found a couple articles. I think I sent you all those articles. I couldn't find anything on YouTube. I was trying to think, where are the conversations like this? And I think it's lacking. You know, and I pray that that people will start having these more. Maybe, like you said, Kenny, a few years ago, you probably wouldn't have talked about this. Same. I probably wouldn't have.
And I'll say this too, Nate. I know you're trying to close. I want to say this too. I think coming to Madison, one of the things that I really love and appreciate about Madison is the trainings that they offer on racial reconciliation and racism trainings that are offered. So when I first started, I went through what we call core training, and I realized that there was a lot of internal racial oppression that I was dealing with. And I didn't realize this in advance, but I realized this by going through that training. And so I want to say, you know, just on this platform, I'm grateful for Madison, and I'm grateful for the work that is being done and has been done throughout the years in our community to bring racial reconciliation and to bring awareness, you know, for that light bulb to go off sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at Marcel Aroches, and he said, is there internal racism that needs to be addressed? And I think that for me, it was the internal racial oppression that needed to be addressed. And it allowed me to see my value as a Black male.
Yes. Yeah.
And for me to have an appreciation and love for my Blackness and all my blackity black, you know, as Glenda says. And so, yes, definitely internal racism needs to be addressed because it's a matter of the heart.
Amen.
It's a matter of the heart.
It is.
All right. Any closing comments, words of encouragement to our listening audience or those who may tune in later? Give me something to encourage. Let's give them something to.
This has been on my mind for the last few minutes. This precious saint already went on to be with the Lord, but she was a small Dutch lady. And I remember when I started working at her Christian Reformed church, she came up to me and she said, I know that it's got to be hard with what you're doing, that, you know, we're not easy. And I just laughed and chuckled at her. She was so sweet. And she said to me, I just want to give you this piece of paper. And on the piece of paper, it said, praise until the spirit of worship comes, worship until the glory comes. And when the glory comes, stand there. And that has stuck with me all of these years, to praise until the spirit of worship comes, worship until the glory comes, and when the glory comes, just stand there. And so I just leave that as an encouragement. That's always been an encouragement for me, to all of my brothers and sisters that are that have the privilege to stand on the altar and to lift up the name of Jesus. Just do that. Praise until worship comes, when it doesn't seem like anybody else is praising, and worship until the glory comes. Worship when it doesn't seem like nobody else wants to worship. But when the glory comes, just stand there, because that's the place that you want to be in. Yes. Be encouraged tonight.
Yeah. Amen.
That's good, Jeremy. I guess I would say, don't lose your worship.
Yeah.
You know, with everything that's going on right now, it's really easy to fall into the trap of despair, depression, oppression. But understand that worship and praise has the ability to break those chains of oppression, to break those chains of addiction, to break those chains of racism. You know, so don't lose your praise, don't lose your worship. And that's what I would say as an encouragement.
And well, thank you all. Thank you, brothers. I really appreciate you both. I love you. And I thank you for taking the time to hang out with me tonight. And then all those who tuned in. I think we need to talk offline, brothers, and get some type of worship project or something going.
Absolutely. You know, I'm always down.
Do a gospel version of
ride y'all coattail. That's all.
Get Marcel and Cindy on here and some other worship people, Gerald Perry and Evan Lachey. I saw him on here. Yeah.
Where is Glenda at? It's been quiet tonight.
Right. She ain't up on this. It should be hilarious.
I said part 2. This is like my 10th close, y'all. Wow, this was great. We'll see what happens next week. We may need to do a part 2 and maybe change the topics around, maybe moving forward or something like that. So again, thank you all for tuning in for another Worship Conversation. We will see. Wait, let me find the end button. Where is it? There it is. We'll see y'all soon.